Our mom's name's Teresa.
How resilient are you? Today at RevelCoach, Alison, Nissen, with my sister, Marcy Stoudt, we are interviewing Teresa Taylor-Williams, who is an award-winning newspaper journalist and a self-proclaimed grief arse-kicker.
Hi, guys.
She first lost her job to downsizing, and then she lost her husband in 2014. But she has since found the true meaning of resilience. And after her home was foreclosed, she lived in subsidized housing while raising her 2 teenage sons. She worked various jobs to make ends meet and engaged in self-sabotaging behaviors in her attempts to cope in life after the loss of her husband. But through grit and determination, Teresa relocated and reclaimed the definition of success and is now the director of diversity for student programs at Emporia State University. And she's also pursuing a master's degree in social work. Welcome, Teresa. We are so glad that you are here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I'm going to start with the first question is how do you define resilience?
Okay. Well, if you look it up, there's my picture. No. Because okay, you guys remember like back in the day, there were those blow up it's like a clown or a bop thing, and you hit it and it pops right back up, and it's like or even the Weebles, you try to, and they pop back up, and it's like that's really kind of how I see resilience is, when you've been knocked down and you've had so many obstacles or barriers, but you keep going, you find it wherever you can find it, whether it's through your faith or digging deep, your own spirituality, and just really keeping one foot in front of the other, and not giving up. It sounds trite, but I don't really know how else to describe it, but just keeping it moving, I guess. Yeah.
So there is something, to keep moving. I mean, seriously, you just got to keep looking at the horizon. If you look in your rearview mirror, you're never going to get anywhere.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And there's definitely lessons learned from where we've been, but so much ahead. So much is ahead.
So a lot of times when people are really stuck and they're in that situation, like maybe we're going back to like that 2014 or that couple years afterwards, like when you get to a place of being stuck and you're trying to look ahead and not in the rearview mirror, but like we all know that if you were going to use, say, Apple Maps or something like that for a GPS, they never will give you directions on where you're headed unless you know where you are. So when you're in that moment of, the little weeble wobble is now down, it's going to come up at some point, just how quick does it come up? How do you help people come to terms with where they are, or like kind of embrace the now so they actually could start taking some steps to move forward? Do you have any sort of ideas around that?
You know what, that's key. I think when you just said, that it's going to come back up again. And I think for some people, that's not where their focus is. Their focus is I'm down, and I don't see my way out of it. And I just really believe that taking also the focus off of myself. And, my late husband used to say, there's always somebody worse off than you. And I would really say, be grateful be mindful of where you're at, and find a reason to be grateful. Even at your lowest of the low, there's something to be thankful for. And I've really tried to live my life like that, in gratitude, finding something, whether it's, okay, thank you, Lord, I'm able-bodied, or that I have clean water, or, that I have a clean bathroom. That means everything. You really think about it. Sometimes you really it's a mental game. You have to really think about people who are in other countries or what have you. And they wish, like Ricky used to say, my husband used to say, there are people who wish they had what you have. Even if you think you don't have much, there's somebody who doesn't have that much. And so that's my thing, is gratitude, being grateful, and and also putting my energies toward other people, you know, because I think they say that when you volunteer, especially if you're grieving, if or you're, you know, you're in a bad, maybe depressed or what have you, focusing on something else or someone else really can help lift you. And it's a little selfish, but that's okay to be selfish. That's what self-care is all about, is being selfish, taking a little time for you, or figuring out what you need in that moment. So yeah.
There's always people talk about the oxygen mask. If you're in a plane, put your oxygen mask on first before you can help anybody else. And so it's true that if we aren't focusing on what makes us strong, we can't really help anyone else around us, because we'll all go down with the ship if that's the case.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so if we were going to be talking to leaders, let's suppose we're a team leader, we're working with other people, and they're experiencing something. Is there something that we could do that would help them so that they would feel supported? There's so many people try to hide what's going on in their lives.
Yeah, and we were talking before the show started, and you know, I'm one of those. I definitely don't. I see value in transparency and authenticity and admitting that I don't have it all together. As you mentioned, I'm a diversity director for our university and diversity student programs. And, you know, that can be a lot of pressure because, you know, my job is to advocate for the underserved. Well, there's a whole heap of folks that are underserved, right? That fall under the DEI category, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so that means you got to know a little bit about a lot of different students and their backgrounds and things. And so I say all that to say, I'm quick to let people know I don't know it all when it comes to DEI, but I'm here to listen, and I'm here to learn, and I'm open to learning. And I feel like with leaders and leadership, you have to be effective. I feel like vulnerability is key, both for, you know, supervisors or admin, and then also for, you know, fellow leaders or you know, people under your leadership. Just being able to allow them to be vulnerable, allow those being led to be vulnerable, but also you yourself in leadership, because it shows our humanity. And I don't understand when people are, you know, kind of robotic and because there are people who are who are robotic and you know, are just like, you know, this is the way, you know, kind of have maybe, I don't want to say stoic, but they just always kind of put up a front. And then when life does happen and they have to show that soft underbelly, you know, they're embarrassed or what have you. And it's like, but we're all human, you know. And I just think there's so much more richness, I guess, to a person when we see so many different sides of them. And so I really think that authenticity and transparency and letting folks know that, you know, you're in your process, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have it all together, and that's okay to not have it all together.
And it's so refreshing to hear, because we often say, like, individually we know a decent amount of things, but collectively we know so much more.
Yes.
And even if you are experienced in DEI and you've run great programs, you've never run it for this latest class of students or for the next class of students. So you kind of embody that vulnerability of like, hey, I'm here to learn as well, because that's really what the culture of those programs should be like, because to serve the underserved, at one point you address one community, and so you think you're doing a great job, but this other community needs something different. So I love how you kind of put that together. And can you give us a little more insight to, like, so my kid, Alison's kids are out of college. I've got one as a freshman and two going, but when our people are looking at universities for their diversity and how they have programs, like, what are some things that we should be looking for? Like, what's a good indicator that the university is good with DEI?
That's an awesome question. I feel like if there's a designated space, like an office, with a person or a team of DEI people, I think that's a good sign, because that shows to me that the university cared enough to invest. They see that it's a priority enough that they want to invest resources into. Because think about it, like, what college campus is homogenous? You know, there's so many different, you know, here we are, I am in the heartland in Kansas, rural Kansas, but yet our campus is so diverse. It is, we have international students. I came here 3 years ago from Michigan, and I didn't know what to expect. And we have a sizable LGBTQ population. You know, we have a large Hispanic population. And so it's just, I just see us as a gem, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, we're here to celebrate each other's differences. And so I guess I would also say, if you see maybe in the programming, you know, what kind of cultural celebrations are included, even in the curriculum, like what kind of classes are offered, like are there, you know, diversity type classes, multiculturalism, you know, that kind of thing. And that's the thing, this is all, people are still, I feel like higher ed is still, you know, figuring it out as far as how much is enough and what have you, but, and there's no pinnacle. It's just, it's that marathon. So I just feel like if the effort is there, that's half the battle. So, but yeah, but DEI work is not easy. It is, I say all the time that it is exhilarating and devastating. It is often, I don't know how many times I've cried in my office, you know, just for various reasons, because you're trying to educate, advocate, inform people, and you're going up against systems and traditions and years, you know, of oppression, and you know, right now it's kind of, in the last couple of years, it's kind of trendy, DEI is trendy, but everybody is not supportive, everybody is not open to change, and so sometimes it's definitely a lot of times it's definitely an uphill climb. And then, you know, resources too, because if you're a Big 12 school or something like that, like you have a DEI office in like every department, every academic department. And other schools, it's not so. You know, there might be one person. In my case, it's me and 3 students who plan, but yet, you know, that's why you have to really cultivate partnerships and relationships with other departments and people, and get them on the train too, you know, so to speak. But enough about DEI. We don't want to talk about that. We want to talk about grief, because grief is my passion.
Oh my goodness. Well, Teresa, thinking back, you started off as a journalist.
Yes.
And then you were downsized. So that lovely, you know, all of a sudden the internet became the do and die thing. Yes. And you transitioned from journalism to the position you have now. How did you make that transition? How did that switch happen?
Oh my, what a road, what a road. Okay, so I started after I was downsized. I was part of what do they call that? A reduction in force, a mass reduction in force. And actually that was a blessing, because I had went through depression. I didn't know what depression was, but my last year there was actually, I was down. I was down for the count. My doctor looked me in the eye and said, you need to find another profession, because your body is telling you this is not for you anymore. And that was so scary, because that's all I knew. I wasn't good at anything else. I wasn't the smartest bulb, you know, the brightest bulb in the pack as far as school. But that's when my faith really had to kick in. And I spent a year. I asked for a couple of days off, and it turned into a year stress leave. And that was pivotal for me. So anyway, the week I came back, I was let go. And but I was okay with that. I had prepared myself as far as mentally, but I was like, what do I do now? I did everything from substitute teaching. I was a library shelver. Okay, no. So the first couple of years I was an adjunct professor. And Alison, you may or may not know, because I know that you teach, but I didn't know. A lot of, for people that don't know, adjuncts don't make much. And so I really learned the value of $1. So then a couple of years later, my husband did die. So I went from being an adjunct to, I worked at a foundation and learned grant making. That was exciting. But I didn't keep that job long, because after the, with grieving, my head was just not in the game and everything. And so then it was the library shelver, adjuncting, worked in a domestic violence shelter, all at once, 3 jobs. And it was just, it was like, keep it together, just try to keep the bills paid and everything. And so lost my home. I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford it. It was a beautiful home, in the suburbs. My kids were in private school. And I look back, there were so many blessings in that time, even though it was so hard. It was so humbling, to leave your neighborhood and to go to, my kids couldn't go to the same dentist because he didn't take Medicaid. You talk about humbling. But, my faith rose, and it was like, you know what, you still have a roof, you still have, your kids to raise, focus on the kids. And I would work 3rd shift at the domestic violence shelter, which I'm so glad I did, because now that I'm pursuing the MSW, that's really where the seed was planted, because I saw, social workers, I think a lot of people think social work is, taking children, you know what I'm saying, or Department of Family Services type, but there's so many things you can do in social work. And I saw in the shelter, social workers advocating at the county building, in court for the victims, and they worked in the shelter and different things. And I was like, I kind of want to look into this. And so anyway, how did I get to here? So nothing was really panning out full time. I was piecing all these jobs together, and I was making it, but I was like barely making it. I was on food stamps and Medicaid. And while I was appreciative, I was in AmeriCorps, which is Peace Corps in America. Basically, it's service. You get paid a little bit of money, but you get benefits. And so that was a blessing too. But I remember I would pull into the parking lot of the different places where I was piecing it together, and I would just cry. I'd be like, there's more, there's got to be more. Like, what am I doing wrong? I was applying for secretary, I was dumbing it down. I had an agency tell me, Michigan Works, yes, I will call you all out right now, but they told me that I needed to basically dumb down my resume because it was too intimidating. And I was just like, isn't your job to help me get a job? And you're like telling me that I'm too much, and I knew I needed to leave Michigan. Not that I didn't hate it. I loved the water. We had been there 23 years, but I was like, I have got to try somewhere else, because if I stay here, I will die on the vine. Like, my season is over here, because nothing is panning out. And my hometown is here in Emporia, Kansas. I was born here. My mother's family is here, and my mother is here caregiving her parents. So she said, why don't you just come here? Why don't you try? Why don't you try? And when I tell you that I had never drove more than 6 hours, it was a 14-hour drive. I put everything I could fit into my Buick and gave away a lot of stuff, put the boys' sentimental stuff in storage. And the boys wanted to stay, my sons wanted to stay in Michigan with their girlfriends. They were grown. So I was like, okay. And some people really kind of talked about me bad because my grandbaby she was like 1, and they were like, how could you leave your grandbaby and all this? And I was just like, something in me was driving me, was pushing me, like, get out, because you're destined for more than this. And I didn't know how or what. I applied, and I'd never been a coordinator of anything before, but because it wasn't director yet, it was coordinator. And I was like, I just have to try. I just know that there's something more. And I have an education, I had a master's degree, and I was like, I gotta try. And I have not looked back. I mean, I look back at Michigan, I've got friends and loved ones, and I love them dearly. But as far as career-wise, I needed to leave. And I don't believe in bad days. And I'll just have to say this. On my most challenging day here in Kansas, it's still not enough for me to say, oh, I wish I hadn't left Michigan. No, it was time. And there were all kinds of signs that were telling me it was time. And since then, my sons have moved here. My grandbaby's here. It's just been a blessing. Now, I don't know how long they'll stay, but it's just been, this is my time. This is my time of cultivation and really digging deep into who Teresa is, because I think so many of us, we as women, we lose ourselves in our wife and mother status. And it doesn't happen intentionally, but I did. I can say for me, I did. So moving here was really my kind of a rebirth and finding who I am. So that's probably more than y'all wanted to know, but
I
I
love
just
it.
had to tell that whole story.
Important, because like our conversations about resiliency. So understanding, the path that you're on to be resilient is so powerful. And I want to go back to this moment. So what I love is you basically never lost trust in yourself. So despite sadness and, having some sort of depression, it does cloud your ability to think clearly, but you really seem to stay true to like, I gotta trust me. I know there's something more. And so like take me back to that moment when that recruiter or whoever it was that said something loud that allowed you to be like, no, you're clearly wrong. Like you're like, you trusted yourself to say that person doesn't know me. How did you do that? Like, how did you do it and not have blame, anger, frustration? And instead you're like, no, I think I might need to move.
I actually, at first I did buck, at first I was like, okay, we are conditioned or trained to get as much as we can. My parents always were like, get as much education as you can. And I had all this life experience and I, put it on there. And I was just like, no, hell no. But you know what? I had become so broken that I just accepted it. And I did dumb down my resume. And I started like going for positions that were clearly, I'm not, judging or anything, but they weren't using my skills, my full skills, my potential. And I don't know, sometimes you do come to those points where you're like, well, I could be happy if I did this, as long as I'm with my kids, or as long as I can keep my rent paid, I could be okay. And I could have been. I'm quite sure I could have been. But is that enough? If you know that there's more in you, you have to take that step. And I remember my church family, those poor people, they were so sweet and so loving. And I say poor because they probably were like scratching their heads. I know they were like, Teresa, we don't know why you're not getting a good job. They were like, and they would just wrap their arms around me when I didn't know how to pray. They were praying for me. And I'm so grateful. Christian Fellowship and Outreach, that was my church. And they were just the sweetest. It was a small little church of a lot of elderly folks and everything, but they really, I believe their prayers carried me. And when I was gonna leave, they were like, yes, it's okay. We'll miss you, but yes, go. And so yeah, if anybody out there is, really in their transition and life as you know it is so different than what it's been, I guess I would just say there's hope and there's more opportunities, but they may not just fall in your lap. You have to go out and seek them, and you have to pray. I say pray because I didn't want to spin my wheels. I'm like, Lord, I need you to really guide me, because I don't want to, I feel like I've already wasted some time, or lost some time, I should say. And I just really, I don't know, God honors faith, and he honors, even if you just take the smallest step, he'll meet you there. And I'm just grateful. I mean, I'm not living a luxury life right now. I'm in an apartment, but I'm happy. I mean, my job is my career is just, I love students. They give me life. Like they just, they come and this is a big reason also why I'm pursuing social work, is these students come in and they just, they just tell you their life. And I want to do more than listen. I know listening is important, but I want tools to help people when they confide, because that's such an honor when people share their lives with you. And it's kind of similar to reporting. I always felt like, wow, people really share their life story with you, or if there's a death, or if there's a celebration, or whatever, they're sharing with their community newspaper. And I just always been honored by storytelling, I guess. And so yeah, I'm studying now I want to just help people. I want to help grievers, because I believe that, especially spouse and partner loss grievers, because I think we are very misunderstood. And I feel like if we can just help more people to understand us, and then if we can help to understand what we're going through, if I can maybe help people with that, because I'm definitely the poster child of what not to do. I did a lot of just trying to, because your mind, there's a thing, right, Alison? Like widow's brain, that's a thing. And I would love to be able to share with people, that I don't have it all together, but I'm making it. I'm not gonna say I made it, because it's a daily, challenge. And I'm a firm believer in support groups and therapy. And I know it's not for everybody, but it has definitely helped me. Definitely.
Having like that support group and the people, like you shared a few different stories, whether it was your church group praying for you when you couldn't pray,
Yes.
like standing you up when you couldn't. And then even, just the move to Kansas, like somebody having gentle words to say, why don't you just give it a try? Yes. Wasn't making it permanent, wasn't making it, but saying the words at the right time. Is that, often when you're in that kind of place of depression, despair, like there are people around you. And if you just trust and allow them to support
yes. And my sister, she's been helpful for me, because I'm writing and developing some I don't know, some course outlines and curriculum towards grief. And she was like, please address the supporters of grievers. She's like, because I so wanted to help you and I didn't know how. And so I was like, that's great. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that feel like that. Because oftentimes, you don't know what you don't know. And if you haven't experienced it, yeah, it's difficult. It can be difficult. So I'm also using my, if I can add, I started a support group, a virtual support group, October 7th of last year. And mainly because when I moved here, I had a wonderful grief support group in Michigan. And I just kind of thought, oh, I'll just find one here. No, it's not so easy to find a wonderful group. And so I started a virtual support group, and we meet every Friday night online, and we've got people from all over, and it's awesome. It's awesome. And it's my AA. You know, some people, you know, alcoholics go to AA. I do grief support. That's what helps me, keeps me kind of even keeled. And if we had one on every corner, it wouldn't be enough. We need more supportive, safe spaces like that.
And Teresa, I'm loving this conversation. I wish we have 100 more questions we could ask you. But if there is somebody that wants to get in touch with you or maybe join your grief group on Friday nights, what's kind of the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah. So really my email, it is the number 2, and then become, BECOME, to become one grief @gmail.com. And then after they contact me, then I can send them a link. Because, you know, we try to screen and everything, but yeah. And then also if they would care to, on iTunes and Spotify, my podcast is called Just a Widow Talk. And that launched on New Year's Eve. And basically I interview, every episode is an interview of different spouse or partner loss. And again, I just want to get the voices out there and allow people to share their stories of their husband, wife, or partner, and their grief journey.
Oh, well, they always say when your vocation is your passion is your vocation. Like when those two worlds combine, like magic will happen. So I know that this is, you're on your path and great things to come. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I have really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yes, it's so great to meet you. So on behalf of my sister, Alison, Nissen, and we want to thank everyone for being here today. You can always subscribe to our YouTube channel to never miss an episode. So I hope everybody has a wonderful day. And again, Teresa, thank you so much for sharing your time and your story with us.
Bye. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.